Welcome to the 2017 Public Sector Summit. We're going to get off to a quick start here. I'm going to come and talk in a little bit, but we do have a special guest talking with us very soon. But when I was looking into the acknowledgement of country, I was reading that the local Indigenous people were the Ngunnawal people, and Ngunnawal means meeting place, so I thought it was fairly appropriate that we were meeting here. And so we do respect the traditional land and the elders past and present from the lands around here in Canberra. Now I'm going to get straight on and introduce our first speaker, and then I'm going to come and have a chat with you after that and have a few more customers speak. But this is a man who's equally excited about the opportunities that the cloud provides to government. Now, I'm under very strict instructions from his lovely EA, Lara, who told me that if I don't sheep hook him out of here at 9:25, she'll never return my calls again. So he's got a meeting at 9:30 up on the hill. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Prime Minister's Special Advisor on Cybersecurity, ALASTAIR MACGIBBON.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Andrew. I really appreciate it. And thank you to Amazon Web Services for having me. Big crowd here today, and I understand much larger than last year. And I think it's indicative of the level of interest in cloud. You may wonder why a cybersecurity guy is talking at a cloud/innovation summit. Usually these things are seen as opposites. Well, to me, innovation and cloud help form the basis upon which we'll make the Australian government more secure. So there is nothing at all in conflict between a person who talks about cybersecurity then also talking about the cloud. In fact, innovation is good, cloud is good because it helps us move off legacy systems. And our biggest risk when we look at things is indeed legacy systems. Now, today I want to say that there have been some substantial changes in the way the government views risk, the way government views cybersecurity. The Prime Minister launched Australia's cybersecurity strategy in April last year. I've been in this role about 15 months. And in that time, the strategy is a robust document. It has quite an ambitious attempt to move us as a government and us as an economy into a safer place, a more resilient place. But there are things that have happened during the year that have moved us quite significantly. And I'll talk about three of them and why talking at an event like this today makes good sense. You may have noticed in August last year that the census stopped functioning. Anyone notice that? I did. On the night I remember I was sick. I got woken up to be told that it was offline. Now, we can look at failure as a bad thing, or we can look at failure or an event as a good thing and as a wake-up call and a way for us to change the way we do our business. And the census was one of those. That brought into question the digital service delivery of government. And the number one way in which Australians engage with government is digitally. So if people started to question our ability to do that, then that meant we had to go back to start asking ourselves some questions on the way in which we do IT, the way in which we gather data, the way in which we use that data and our services to the public. So the census was a really important point of inflection. The next major point of inflection from a cybersecurity point of view actually happened during the US elections, where it's now widely acknowledged that a foreign state looked to influence the outcome of the election in the United States. The only question now is whether it did influence an outcome. But a foreign state actually going in and compromising an email server and essentially doxing a political party to look to change an outcome of an election. And the third point of inflection for us, amongst many, was the WannaCry incident back a few months ago. Now, you'd recall that WannaCry was a global ransomware campaign, fastest growing crime type. Ransomware happens all the time, but the point of difference in WannaCry was it actually impacted infrastructure in places like the United Kingdom and shut down health services and other such things. Again, from a political and government point of view, you can imagine the types of shivers that sends up the spine of government agencies, state, territory and Commonwealth. So those 3 points of inflection have radically and dramatically increase the amount of political pressure upon us to deliver better cybersecurity for the Commonwealth and, frankly, for the nation. Interestingly, I'd tell you that the pressure from industry upon us as government entities to deliver a more resilient economy has also increased, and perhaps most importantly of all, the public itself is demanding that type of shift. The public that who here is, you're probably going to ask this question, but who here is from government? Well, it is Canberra after all, so it's about representative, right? So probably half the audience, do you reckon? Is that about right? So whether you work in a corporate or you work for government, the public expects us to do this stuff better. And there are two key things that I think have shifted with that pressure. The first is, rather than talking about security, we talk more about resilience. That's a good thing. Because really, if you're not resilient, if you can't provide your services, no point having security. And the other most important one is a shift from talking about compliance to that of risk. Compliance is important. I don't want you to think that I'm saying that that information security manuals and all the guidance that we have on what to do is bad. It is good and it needs to be followed. But this is a risk discussion. Compliance is there to drive down risk. And I'm going to make a potentially controversial statement to you to say that our risk aversion as government actually increases our risk. We accrete risk because we fail to move as fast as we could. We accrete risk if we think that just by being compliant, we are reducing risk. Because those things do not actually work. In other words, by moving slowly and by relying just upon our compliance mechanisms, we increase risk for the very people that we serve. And we just hope that that risk isn't realised on our watch. And that's just not an acceptable position. As someone that owns a lot of that risk, I'd say to you, please don't. So please innovate, because again, I wear the joy associated with those things. And so why cloud? And I'm not spruiking for any particular cloud platform. I want to say that the types of things that I think help us reduce risk. The first is, particularly for small agencies, we have a skills gap. We have a skills gap globally in terms of cybersecurity. We certainly have a skills gap in Australia. And if you run small agencies or medium-sized agencies, we have skills gap inside those agencies. Any platform that will be run professionally for us is a good thing. It's a good thing because, especially if it's a globally tested platform, we get the benefits of the globe. We get the wisdom of the crowd. We get the fact that there are plenty of other tenants there demanding certain types of security. If we look at things like WannaCry, that was essentially a patching problem. And if patches are done then for us, then that's a good thing. Particularly if you're not running, run XP boxes on is Amazon based on X? If it is, then don't use it. So I'm not sure if I've just done something bad for Amazon there. But if you are running XP boxes, so we're talking about patching. We're talking about being professionally run. And we talk about scale and that concept of the wisdom of the crowd and the other tenants. And those things dramatically help. Now I'm going to say that compliance matters, and compliance does matter. It is the responsibility of the agency, and frankly of those of us who are here to help you, to wear that risk associated with our operations. You cannot outsource risk. So that means while you may outsource infrastructure and services, you own the risk associated with doing that. So you must make sure that you deal with those issues. So the other important thing we have to do is make sure that we invest in actually migrating legacy apps. Another thing I'd say to you is we almost play a Jenga game or a reverse Jenga game where we play a Jenga game where we're just adding layer upon layer. We're building upon legacy app upon legacy app, legacy system upon legacy system, and we have to make sure that as we innovate and move to the cloud, which we should do, and the government has said we must, that we also invest in migrating the old, hard-to-move systems up. Because if we don't, we're actually just building that Jenga tower. And that's an even more unhealthy place if it's possible for us to be as government. So the messages I'd give you is that there is nothing at all wrong with talking about innovation and cloud in the same sentence as security. In fact, we need to talk about those things in the same sentence. That we do need to think about compliance, but we also need to think about the stability in the professionally run systems that we operate. And there is nothing at all wrong with us having that done by other folks. So I really appreciate being the security guy starting this conversation, Andrew. I'm going to live up to your promise to Lara because I'm the one that wears even more risk there, and say, I hope you have a great conference, and thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks. You'll have to explain to me what XP is. I'm still a young man. I think it might have been before my time. Sorry. Talk about the speed at which these things are running. This slide here was put together for me last night, and already the registrations have gone over 1,300. So we had 572 people register last year. This is the 4th year that we've done this. 572 registered, so we've got over 1,300 registered now. The first year we ran this, anybody here that year? I can tell you there's less than 80 of you because there was 80 people in the realm. That's, to put that into perspective, that's the first 3 rows here. So we managed to get some people around for that, and today we're running 28 technical sessions in some of the breakout rooms. In the Partner Solution Expo, we have 19 great partners over there who are ready to hear from you about what some of the problems that you have. And that's one of the feedback that I got from the partners last time, is that government agencies and public sector organisations were coming up to them, and rather than saying, what do you do, they were saying to them, this is the problem that I have. And they were asking if the partner, straight out, if the partner could help them with them, and if they weren't, they were moving on to the next booth, and then to the next booth. And by the end of it, they were getting some answers to some of the problems that they have. So these are some of the great partners that we have working with us today and sponsoring the event, our platinum sponsors, our gold sponsors, and our silver sponsors. Now, often the summit, I've been with AWS for 5 years, and I get to reflect on what are the themes each year. Now, these are some of the themes that I've come across. In the first year, I had to explain to people that I wasn't there to sell them Kindles, that I was actually there to talk to them about cloud computing, and then obviously the next question was, well, what is cloud computing? And so we had a lot of those conversations in the early days. Now, the reason I put a plus after some of these is that some of these areas we're still talking about now, but this was when they kind of peaked in their interest, in their themes across government. And 2013-14 was when we worked with the Australian Signals Directorate in setting up the Cloud Certified Security List. And we still talk about security these days, but as ALASTAIR mentioned, there is a general belief and understanding that you can be more secure in the cloud than in your on-premises environments. 2015, we started tackling procurement, and that's an ongoing opportunity and challenge for us. But they were some of the themes. So it got me thinking about, well, what have customers been talking to us about last year, 2016, and 2017? And it's really a combination of all of these things together. But this is what most public sector organisations are tasked with today, that's putting them under a lot of pressure. And that's the requirement to deliver 24/7 government. So what is that? It's an ability to deliver services to citizens whenever they want them, not when your IT teams are available. And there's a few things that came to mind with this. When I was talking to a senior executive at one of the big government agencies, and they were tasked by their new incoming executive to deliver 24/7 services to the Australian citizens. When they broke that down, one of the core components of it, one of the mandatory components of that, was the use of cloud services. And so when we broke that down a little bit more, these are some of the tenets, I suppose, or the core pillars of what makes up 24/7 government. This is an ability for government agencies to respond to, I suppose, what you might consider the consumerization of IT, or the demands of being able to get any service at any time on the little black box that sits in your pocket. And now there's an expectation for government services to be delivered like that. Now, that'd be great if you were given a 20, 30, 40% increase in budget to do this. But I don't think there's many government agencies that have got that. In fact, a lot of the time you're facing a decreasing budget in order to deliver a high level of service to your citizens. So I'm going to now introduce the next speaker, and she's going to talk a little bit more about this. So 7 years ago, she launched the global public sector business at AWS. And 5 years ago, she was kind enough to give me a job to launch the ANZ business for public sector here for Amazon Web Services. She's been a regular visitor to Australia. She's spoken at a number of our summits over the years. She joins us all the way today from her nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Please welcome to the stage Vice President and Head of the Worldwide Public Sector, TERESA CARLSON.
Thank you. Hey. Look at this crowd. This is awesome. I do remember the first time I was here doing this 4 years ago, and I think there was, Andrew may have said this, like 50 people. So this is really awesome. And we're getting so much momentum with public sector here in Australia. And to be here in Canberra to see this attendance is really great. So thank you so much for attending. So let's jump in. Let me give you just a really quick business update about what's going on with AWS. And I can tell you we are really busy. And in fact, I'll invite you guys right now. We have our reInvent conference in Las Vegas, which will be our 6th year in November, the end of November. And I think we're going to have about 39,000 people there. If that's just an indication of the first year we had that, we had about 5,000 people. So it's really crazy, but it's networking, sessions, customer breakouts, and last year I have a public sector breakfast, and even at that I had 1,800 people at my breakfast at 6 in the morning. So it just shows you the commitment to people sort of showing up and wanting to hear what's happening in cloud computing. So we're doing work around the world. We're in 190 countries, growing by leaps and bounds. In fact, we're at a $16 billion revenue run rate, which we just announced in our quarterly earnings, which is we're still the fastest growing IT company in the world to hit $10 billion in run rate in less than 10 years. And we're still growing at about 42% year-over-year growth, which is pretty good. And, you know, it's not to be boastful about these numbers, but mainly just to say cloud is caught on. It is the new normal. And people, it's really growing, and it's a commitment to our customers really utilizing AWS because cloud, you choose. You make the decision. It's up to you because it's a utility, and you only pay for what you use. So you really speak with your dollars that you spend on AWS. And if you don't want to just listen to us, for the 6th consecutive row in a year, we've been the leader in the AWS, or in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. You can see we're up in the top right. So in terms of our completeness of vision and our ability to execute. So that's pretty exciting for us, and we want to continue to stay there. Our public sector customers really are our superheroes. I feel like you all are superheroes. In the 24/7 government that you really have to drive, everything has to be mission critical that you're doing. And when we started the public sector business 7 years ago, we adhere to all the Amazon leadership principles. But a couple of the other things that we've always said, and if you've ever been here before, you've heard me talk about paving the way for disruptive innovation and making the world a better place. And what I see our government customers doing, our education customers doing, not-for-profit or researchers, they are really building the airplane while they are flying it. You could not shut down. You have to keep going. And I just want to give a call out to all my friends at the Red Cross and workers in the U.S. who are responding to the hurricane in Texas and the floods. I don't know if y'all have seen that. But, you know, we're working with those first responders and the citizens who are superheroes right now, who are just out there really saving lives and responding daily. But that's the kind of thing that we have to do in government and first responders. You always have to be on. And that's really sort of clear in how many of you here, are working on contracts that you're working to meet your mission through solving your big challenges and using your innovation. I was listening to ALASTAIR backstage, and I loved what he was talking about in terms of cybersecurity and innovation have to be met with one. You can't really separate those kind of things. And it's funny because we really used to hear that cloud is not secure. But that changed, and I can share my own personal story of starting the business. We used to be able to walk into an agency, a ministry, and we couldn't, not even 30 seconds into walking into the door, I got, you're not secure, we can't use cloud's not good for us. And so that's changed. And today, you get amazing quotes like this from Tony Scott, who's the former federal government, U.S. federal government CIO, that says you should be moving. It is faster. And in fact, at my Worldwide Public Sector Summit in D.C., just in June, we had on stage the Central Intelligence Agency, the Ministry of Justice in the UK, and GCHQ from the UK talking about security and why they're using AWS in the cloud. And I sat there and said, I don't need to say anything because I have three top agencies in the world talking about why they are utilizing cloud. So that, for me, that's really was the most important thing, hearing the voice of the customer. So then when we talk about government being 24/7, as Andrew sort of pointed out in the beginning, there's 4 areas that I'd like to walk you through today, which is resilient government, secure government, the partner, let me add citizens because of the work we see them doing, community, and really automation, automated government, and how do you make that happen through a cloud-based model. So let's start with resilient. What does that mean and why do you care? When we came up with the idea of Amazon Web Services and cloud, it was really important for us to have an industrial strength, secure, resilient, reliable design to our infrastructure. And we have really taken a unique approach with how we've built and designed our infrastructure on a global basis. So what we do is when we build infrastructure around the world, we always start with 3 availability zones. And in 3 availability zones, we have multiple data centers. So we never just build 1 data center or 2 data centers. We have multiple data centers within each of those availability zones. And then not only do we have 3 availability zones, they're on different grids. We've set up to make sure floodplains, they're on separate floodplains, they're far enough apart, yet close enough together, that the backup can be set up properly, and then on earthquake fault lines. So we look at all that. We even look at the environmental underpinnings. Is it safe? Has it had inappropriate use of that land prior? So we're very particular about the way we build these. And our supply chain. We're very particular about our supply chain, and as you probably know, we build and innovate and invent most of what we do. Now, why that's important to you is that if one of those availability zones go down, your data is still up and running and safe and secure and resilient. So that's just a model of how we build, and have always done that with industrial strength. And that's one of the things that really set us apart and why we work well for a government model. Now, we've got this set up, but then it's really important because you need to connect into that region. So you may have seen in the press about our Direct Connect, but what I'm announcing today is that we're launching Direct Connect just in the next few weeks here in Canberra, and we're adding infrastructure here. And this is a secure, dedicated dark fiber with our partner NextDC, And why this is important for you, customers around the world in government use Direct Connect. Direct Connect is where you can connect from your data centers directly into Amazon Web Services in an encrypted dark fiber line that traverses the internet, which actually also saves you bandwidth cost and charges, helps provide additional layers of security because you're not riding on the internet itself, and it helps you move faster. So we're really excited, and I hope you're excited with us, and we'll start hooking up Direct Connect as soon as we launch. Now let's talk about security. So ALASTAIR on stage was talking about security. Why do we care? Well, we care very deeply. Before we even started building, and Amazon Web Services was just a seed, security was top of mind. Because with a company like Amazon, who holds millions and millions of customers' personal identifiable information, we think about security every day. It's already very important. But when you have a business like ours, you always have to be ahead. And I'll share one of the things that also sets Amazon Web Services apart from an average provider is that when something happens, we deeply look at it to improve. So we're in constant mode of thinking about how do we do things better, and we're also troubleshooting things before they happen. I'll talk about this slide for a minute, which is really our NASCAR slide on global security accreditations. But why this slide is important is because we took an early approach to security and compliance. And we said we're not only going to meet, but we're going to overachieve the bar on security and compliance. And IRAP is on the top. And we've met, I don't know of anything that we haven't met. And by the way, we have auditors in our data centers constantly looking at for one of these. And I'll point out FISMA, which is on the slide. FISMA is a very old and early security model in the U.S. government, completely paper-based, not appropriate for cloud, I'll just say. But we still work to go through the process because it was the early one. But if you look right below that, there's one called FedRAMP. And FedRAMP was really the first security and compliance regime that was ever established for cloud out of the U.S. government. And a lot of these others came after that, but the controls, a lot of the controls in the environment is very much the same. But FedRAMP is something, it took us about 2 years to work through with the U.S. government. But we were the first ones in, we worked with them hand in glove, and we were persnickety with them on, we needed to explain why controls in cloud were different, and you needed sometimes less because they were blended together when you were using a cloud-based model versus a traditional model of on-prem. So I like the FedRAMP model. It's helped the U.S. government move faster. And when we achieved it, our entire infrastructure around the world achieved it, which meant that anytime a partner or a customer built a solution on our infrastructure, they inherited all those controls. So how we help you move faster as a community, when you build, you've already inherited all those security and compliance controls. And the other thing I was sharing, one of the very first proposals we responded to here in Australia was one from Victoria, I think it was, where when we opened up the RFP, the first thing it had at the top of it was the NIST definition of cloud. This was about 3 years ago now. NIST is the National Institutes for Standards and Technology, and we help them, along with other government agencies and other vendors, create the definition early on for cloud. And the reason I tell that story is around the world now, all these certifications and accreditations, governments are starting to work together and talk to each other and learn from each other. And it's important that we build that community out because of the threat that we have, but also the opportunity. So now you've seen sort of the accreditations and the certifications. Let's dive a little bit deeper here. And this is really shows you areas as we build, we think about security tools at the networking level, the encryption level, the identity and access management, and then the compliance and accreditation. But we have built a set of tools for each one of these areas that you can take advantage of, and we keep adding to those security services and capabilities. And in fact, not only do we have these tools as we build, then we also have our partner community that builds additional tools and services that you can take advantage of. Many of these services, by the way, more than 90% of these came from you all telling us what you needed. And one in particular that I wanted to talk to you about today was our AWS Shield. And AWS Shield is a DDoS protection. We provide that at a standard level to all of our customers, and then there's an advanced level for that. But if you think about it, when you have a DDoS attack coming into your agency, you want to be able to buffer that through something and not take that hit head on. This provides you that protection, the analytics of what's happening, and recommendations on what to do. Also, by the way, we have just a standard practice now in model. If you get a DDoS attack and you're doing a bunch of scaling, we don't charge you for any of that scaling event. We are very proactive with you, but we want to provide you the tools that help you be safer on a daily basis and really understand what's happening in your enterprise. So now I'd like to invite somebody to the stage with an organization that I think was one of the very first I met with when I came here my first visit, which was the Australian Post. And an amazing individual, Andrew Waldeck, who is their e-commerce service group chief digital officer, and he does everything. Since I've met him, he's really helped transform the Australian Post. But one of the things he's really done that he's going to talk to you about today is what he and his team have done as an example of a trusted brand that's built a highly secure, highly available customer set of applications. So please put your hands together and help me welcome Andrew Waldeck to the stage.
Well, thank you, Teresa, and for the opportunity just to be able to share some of our story. So what I would like to talk with you about today is, a bit of a story of Post's transformation. But it's more so how, through our change, we're now improving our ability to move faster, be more responsive to our customers, and create new things because of the platforms that now enable our organisation. And these platforms are things that have then transformed our ability to be able to create a future for ourselves. Now, one thing that I want to start with is to start to talk about what we see digital transformation is. And it's not necessarily about a great new website or a new app or producing a new API or improving those things. It is those things. We've done those, and we're continuing to evolve those things. But in our context, digital transformation is about creating a contemporary company. It's about creating an organisation that can thrive in the digital age, and about helping it to then go through its fundamental change as we need to be able to enable that. And as we've been thinking and learning and understanding what's moving in the market and how things are changing, there's a couple of stats that for us end up being really powerful. And you see the one there that's certainly talking about the volume of jobs that are going to change, and certainly there'll be a number of jobs that will also be enabled through this fundamental change. But the thing that I think is most interesting was then spending the time considering the fact that 3 out of 4 of the world's largest companies will then exit the S&P 500 in the next 15 years. And the thing that's kind of interesting about that stat is when you go back to the 50s and 60s, if you created a large organisation, generally you were big for a long time, 30, 40 years. So if you created something that you were known for, it stayed. But the rate of change has fundamentally altered all of that. We're now at a period where we can see an organisation come from nowhere to have scale, and that can be done almost within 12 months. It can be done because their access to technology, their access to cloud platforms is what enables and fuels their ability to create the opportunity that they can now seize and they can now create. And for Post, of course, you'll all have your story of what it's like to be able to interact with our organisation. For some of you, you interact with our post offices. A number of you love buying online, and we thank you so very much. Continue doing that, please. And we love being the delivery agent for online shopping and doing a better job of that. But of course, we've operated as one of Australia's most trusted brands for a long period of time. It's something we are incredibly proud of. But that trust has come from the very notion that something that's been important to a person in a community or to help a community to be able to connect with each other and do what they do, we have helped them to be able to enable that future to then be true. Now, our challenge, of course, is our ability to have built that trust has all come from the traditional products and services that we've provided. And for our future, we need to shift that to different things that our people and communities will trust as we continue this great purpose that we've always had of helping people and communities to connect with each other, connect with the world, to transact commerce, to communicate and to do what they do. And for our business, though, it's going through that seismic change. We spent 200 years creating a business. And then, at the point in 2008, that business then changed. So it took us 200 years to go and build something, and then in the time since, 50% of that has gone. Likewise, for the traffic that's coming into our post offices, that is also fundamentally changing. But what we acknowledge now, it is in fact our ability to change that is our strategic advantage. It's our ability to evolve and to adapt that is now becoming a core part of our DNA. And for our change, we're evolving to then have some very important capabilities that are fundamentally critical to enabling that future to be true. One, of course, you see in online shopping. And we continue to work hard to improve the service that we provide. And that service is growing significantly. But that service is not enough in and of itself to help to provide all of the future for the company that we want to be able to. So we need to continue to create other reasons as to why Post will continue to play a role in communities moving forward. Another one of our fantastic capabilities that has evolved are our technology platforms. In terms of our compute infrastructure, in terms of the partnership that we have with AWS, what you'll see, and I'll show you some statistics a little bit later, we've now gotten to the point where the bulk of that compute power is now starting to operate on cloud platforms. Of course, with AWS being one of our most significant and important partners in helping us on that journey. But the other thing that's important is our people and our culture, evolving how we work. And that's perhaps been one of the most important changes for us. On our busiest days, we will deliver 2 million parcels. And if we're all evolving to be customer-centric organisations in our ability to ensure that what we deliver has impact on every single parcel, every single moment, then we have 2 million chances to get it right and 2 million chances to get it wrong. But on that same day, on our busiest day, we can have 1 million people in our post offices. And we're also delivering to 11.4 million households every day. For our organisation, we have millions of chances every day to get it right and to get it wrong. Now, what's pleasing, the overwhelming majority of the time we get it right. But you also see are times when we don't. And we live in this great digital world where those things can be shared and referred instantly. For our people and our culture, that matters incredibly. And it's a very important part of how we're driving our change. But I, of course, want to challenge the notion that large companies really can't innovate, that they can't change quickly. An interesting example I've got, and I've actually used this slide a few times, but it's very apt as I stand before you and then talk about Amazon. One of the things, as we've learnt about our own change, is starting to understand how other organisations work, how they've committed to what they've done, and how that's then fueling the opportunity that they now have with their customers. For Amazon, of course, it's creating an incredible future for itself. And I think everybody would certainly agree they are perceived as an incredibly innovative company. Now, the one thing that I think that is interesting about that organisation, they are 10 times the size of Australia Post. Based on the last data point I've got, there are 341,000 people inside of that organisation, and in the last year alone, they added 110,000 people. They added 3 Australia Posts to their organisation in the last year. Does that change their ability to create? Does that change their ability to be perceived as an innovative organisation? What is different about them? And I think the thing that's interesting is moving to these models that exist now where we see platforms as the basis of us then enabling the type of futures that have to be created. These business models that also work in government actually provide an ability to ensure that when we design for our products, for our services, for the things that we deliver, we think about a two-sided part of the market in terms of what we end up delivering. And for our business at Post, we have 4 core platforms that we are now building. We have 2 pieces of physical infrastructure that almost operate in a way as national infrastructure in our retail business and in our deliveries business. And we work hard to provide that in every Australian community and to enable people and communities and governments to be able to do what they need to do moving forward. But we are also creating 2 pieces of, in a way, national digital infrastructure now, one in identity and one in payments, that are built to be able to scale, that then will be seen to then help to enable the digitisation and the evolution of this economy. It is our view, certainly, that the ability to be able to drive that next wave of digitisation will be enabled because we can be more confident that somebody is exactly who they say they are when we want to transact online, and that when we facilitate the exchange of important services and goods that need to have a payment, we need to be able to trust in that to then enable the next evolution of what we can then go and move to. So if these 4 core platforms exist inside of our organisation, then for us, we're also prioritising something that's fundamentally important in our culture about changing how we work. And now our ability to team, our ability to work with partners, our ability to change what was traditionally an approach where for a large organisation like ours, we were organised very hierarchically, and now we've changed so that we form cross-functional teams around a customer problem, and that's what accelerates our ability to move forward. But with that change, we've then seen a transformative impact that is now having on our ability to create the opportunity that we need. And I'll give you an example. So with our work with AWS that's been going now for several years, as an important partner, what we've done is then transformed our ability to create. Previously, if somebody had an idea in the morning of something that was new, that we felt responded to a customer need, it could take us 6 to 9 months to get to a point that we'd have an ability to create something that we could start to customer test with. We can now do that in 7 minutes. We no longer have a discussion about provisioning infrastructure, doing what we need to do. We've just accepted this is a platform, which is how we work. We have changed the way in which our leaders can create, how quickly we can respond to our customers, and it is enabling us to change our entire culture. One of the examples of this is as it starts to manifest in our new identity business. Now, there's some parts that are new and some parts that we've been doing for a long time. In one example today, we certainly work hard to verify the identity of about a quarter of the Australian population every year, and moving forward, we're now giving those same people an ability to be able to do that from a smartphone. Our digital ID platform, which is built on top of AWS and our security architectures that exist, give us an ability to be able to create a platform that can scale and can ensure that we can adapt and evolve how it will work moving forward. Now, for this platform, what you'll see is it's an ability to help people to be able to prove their identity. So you can be applying for a particular bank account, but in one click, a person has an ability to reuse their important identity information which they've created once. They're given consent and control over how they share that information, and they can reuse it when they apply for insurance, in health services, in electricity. It helps to verify the identity even when they're filling in a paper form, which exists everywhere today still. And importantly, once they have applied for particular services, they can then store particular licenses or checks that they've obtained so that they can then go and reuse them. The whole purpose here is to remove the friction that exists in our economy, because it's really difficult for someone to be able to prove that they are who they say they are. And this is an example of one of the platforms that we're building that we see has great aspiration moving forward and has started to be adopted by many of our customers that we're bringing to market now. But for the transformative change we've been through, we're at a point now where over 50% of the interactions that we have now with our customers are digital-based interactions. There are hundreds of millions of interactions we facilitate every year. We do that using the wonderful platform that we have built our capabilities on over time and we have transitioned to, and it's no longer an option for us whether we work this way. The only option for us is to work this way. What we've seen is the power of what we can create, the impact that we can have with our customers, and what we can now do moving forward. I think the thing that is in fact most powerful has been our ability to be able to realise what's enabled when you have a platform that exists that can then enable transformational change inside of your own organisation. But it's not just about the platform. It's about the people and the culture and the decisions you need to make to commit to something to produce a future that needs to come to be true. And we love the quote that exists here. At the end of the day, you just have to make a decision and go. And that's now how we work and how we're changing. So thank you for the opportunity. Have a good day.
So much. That was amazing. Thank you. Wow. Some of those digital stats are pretty mind-blowing. I think it's just a really amazing example of how digital transformation is happening around the world. Everything is really moving toward a digital model. And we talk about 24/7 government. That is what your citizens expect also, is that digital enablement of citizen services. The ability to provide those services in real time, because I think our citizens and our government should expect and have delivered to them the same type of services that they get every day through their mobile device, the Australian Post, and other things that you do just through your app store. Now let's talk about our partner community, the partner and I'll say citizen community, because it just doesn't happen by itself. This is sort of the third pillar that we had on of the four. And one of the things that we are really proud about at Amazon Web Services is the partner ecosystem that we've built, the partner community. We have over 56 premier partners today, which is premier, our top tier, but 10 of those are actually in Asia Pacific and Japan, which is pretty cool, actually. And we have thousands and thousands of system integrators, and some you'll see and hear from today, and examples that we mentioned of Accenture, Melbourne IT, Gruden, and ITOC. But these are just some examples of the really broad community of system integrators and premier consultants that we have. but also the ISV community or the SaaS community, because I find many times our customers begin to utilize the capabilities of cloud computing first through a SaaS provider. Folks like Technology One, Splunk, Intel, and also Australian Post. They are actually a SaaS provider to you on their services on a daily basis from their digital platform that Andrew just went through for us. Now, this is really showing you this really broad ecosystem. And I think there's two things that I want to point out about the ecosystem or the partner community here. The partner community is, what I shared earlier, is when they build their infrastructure and application on Amazon Web Services, they inherit all those security controls that we talked about. But we also provide them the ability to go global fast. So when they build their application, they can immediately launch that application in a new region that they want to move into. So it's very simple. They build an Amazon machine image, they have it set up, and they know that they're going to get consistency around the world. So we talk about scalerators and scaling up, and I just visited your innovation center here in Canberra 2 days ago. And I met some of the scalerators, some of the companies, both incubators and companies that are SMEs. And it's important. They have now a platform that they can move forward and scale. When they scale, they can move from local to global to regional fast. And that's what we want this community to be able to do. But now specifically from a public sector perspective, we heard from our partners, give us certifications and programs that speak to us. Help us become premier partners in the government and education community. So we launched AWS government programs, and we announced some of these at our public sector summit, our global public sector summit in DC this year. But we have 450 partners now recognized in our AWS competency and public sector programs. And I'm going to invite you all to join our community, because what we provide are resources, programming, and you get the good housekeeping seal of approval from us when you join and you meet the criteria for that. But we also announced a new program for AWS competency in education. And we just, again, announced this a couple of months ago, and we already have quite a few partners, including, I see Technology One and Splunk are down there. So that's exciting, and we want to add to the education ecosystem, because it's, of course, so important to the growth of not just the business and what you're doing, but to be able to recognize as we create new programs for STEM. And just this week at VMworld, we announced our partnership with VMware on AWS. And this is really important to you because it provides the IT pros. I think the headline from TechCrunch was, VMware is now live on AWS and the IT pros just did a happy dance. And I can tell you a lot of my government customers are doing a happy dance because they've spent a lot of money and time on VMware, and now they can take advantage of AWS and VMware jointly, which is pretty cool. So we're excited about that partnership, and we'll look forward to working with you and giving you more details. But not only, when we talked about sort of the partner community, I wanted to share, how many of you know where Bega Valley is? Does everybody know where Bega Valley is? Well, I've not been there, but I really want to go because it looks like the place to be. So yesterday I met with one of your MPs that represents Bega Valley. I was able to spend time with a partner of ours, Tupai, who is doing amazing work paving the way to create an ecosystem like a Silicon Valley in Bega Valley. And they're trying to not only do that for Australia, but they're trying to look at an environment to say, where could we attract new talent? Where can we create new professional skills? And what's the way we do that the very best way we can? So I'd like to introduce some very special guests that we have in the audience today from Bega Valley. We have a set of students here today, and if you all could stand up and wave over here in the corner, let's welcome our young computer scientists and software developers to be over here. They are so important. They are the most important aspect, I think, of what we all do day to day, which is creating an environment for jobs creation, which at the same time creates economic development opportunities for local communities and countries. So your charge is I want to see you all in STEM careers, and then I want you all to come to work for Amazon. How about that? So thank you all for coming there. But now, with that, we got to make sure that we're working with them on a continual basis and get them educated. So spend a little time and network with them. So the next area that we talked about in 24/7 is automated. And you want to make sure that everything you do, the services scale without human intervention, and you have mechanisms in place that really allow them to do that. Amazon Serverless Toolkit, which is a set of services, Lambda, which is serverless. How many of you tried Lambda? Anybody in here? It's very cool. DynamoDB, database services, S3 storage, our API gateway, and Kinesis, which is real-time streaming and analytics of that data. And now I'm just touching on these. There's going to be breakout sessions that you should all go to that are much deeper technically, and you'll get a lot more on this. But the reason these tools are important, and I wanted to highlight them today, is you need to think about not what you're doing today with your technology stack, but where are you going to move with digital and innovation? And you need to be thinking about machine learning and artificial intelligence in the public sector space, because this is already catching on and being used in the commercial world. But these tools are extremely important to the work that you do and can help you do that work much faster, better, cheaper, and with the information analysis that you need. 3 of the other tools is Amazon Recognition, Amazon Poly, and Amazon Lex. And Amazon Recognition is image recognition and analysis powered by deep learning. Amazon Poly is text-to-speech powered by deep learning. And Amazon Lex is natural language processing, conversational and interaction, voice and text. And I'm going to give you a couple examples, but one is near and dear to my heart. We're working with an organization called Thorn, which is Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher's organization that they started around childhood exploitation and trafficking. And we've worked with them. We have over 300 policing organizations in the U.S. where they go into the dark web and they look at both handwriting analysis and visual recognition, because a lot of times these perpetrators actually make the children write their own ads. And we can use handwriting analysis and try to work backwards on that, as well as looking at the children themselves and understanding other things across the web that connects them. So we were already finding children, getting them back to their families, and we are putting these perpetrators in jail where they belong. So that's an example of how we're using it. Another one that's sort of interesting, C-SPAN uses Amazon Recognition to look at the face of politicians, which sometimes is very necessary for us in public sector to know what's going on camera, and index all the activities in their archives. Using as really, it's reduced their time of video analysis and labor from an hour to 20 minutes and going down. We're doing the same thing with these tools in the White House Historical Association to take all the archiving in the White House that's not been done. The other organization near and dear to my heart is the American Heart Association. Nancy Brown's the CEO, and if you haven't looked her up, she's spoken a few times just last week at our Imagine a World a Better Place conference, which is our not-for-profit summit, which we had in Seattle last week. She was one of my keynote speakers. And they are so progressive in the way, heart disease is still the #1 killer in the world. So she and her organization are working hard with their set of researchers on finding more rapid cures, looking at why heart disease, strokes, and diabetes are happening. But they've used Lex within their tool to both do fundraising, and they have a browser-based solution to register participants text-to-speech to do the heart walk, which my team is participating in this year, which I'm very happy, and some of our partners. So try these tools. They're really important. Machine learning, get involved, understand how, because the tools are better than ever, and they make what you're doing really easier, faster, really understanding your data that's coming in and making automation of that much more capable. And this is an example today of customers already taking advantage of this in big ways, from NASA to C-SPAN to Pinterest to WizKids and UCLA. So you have universities, government, enterprises. So it's pretty cool using just amazing applications. Now, 24/7 government applies to all sectors, of course, but it's important for our public sector to really make connections and work closely together in the research world to put those connections to work so we can speed innovations and speed understanding of what's necessary. And researchers around the world use AWS. It's one of the first things when I started the business, I had a bunch of researchers come to me and say, we need to be able to use AWS more in our research because a lot of our dollars are just going to server time and we're not getting to complete our research. So we want to switch it. Instead of paying 80% for our infrastructure, we want to be able to pay 20% and do it for much longer and get our research done. So the things that we've done to speed that along are we've created an Amazon Web Services Institute for thought leadership, where we're bringing together and problem solving on big ideas, big things that we think we could really solve. Like the UK, we're working on ways that they can use IT to utilize their move into Brexit because they have a lot of transformation that they have to achieve. We have public data sets on AWS. So if you go to AWS and search data sets, we have some of the biggest and best open data sets there for you to take advantage of to do research, and we keep adding to those. We also have our AWS Cloud Credits program for research, where we give millions of dollars of credits and technology consulting time away to help support the researchers and scientists to get their jobs done faster, as well as our cloud innovation centers, where we work with our partners, as well as some that we drive ourselves to look at research, again, around like cities of IoT, areas of training, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. And with all these things, you have a lot of great research going on here today in Australia. And we have someone here that's going to tell you about the amazing work that they're doing at Geoscience Australia. So please put your hands together and welcome Anthony Stinziani to the stage to talk about what they're doing.
Hello, everyone. My name's Anthony Stinziani. I'm the CIO at Geoscience Australia. What I'm going to do today is run you through a bit of a story that we've got in Geoscience Australia for the next 15 minutes around our application of Amazon Web Services. But more importantly, I'm going to dive down a little bit into some of the how in what we've actually achieved rather than saying what we're going to do. Geoscience Australia, I'll just give you a little bit of a brief on what we actually do and why we're here. Geoscience Australia, we play quite a key role in the national economy in Australia. Our work around reducing the risk of minerals and energy exploration is a key factor in our GDP, and like it or not, it's going to be a key factor in the GDP for a little bit longer. It might change into the future, but for now, that's one of our main roles in the economy in Australia is boosting that GDP by reducing that risk. We also play a very strong role around emergency management, emergency response and emergency mitigation around floods, bushfires, cyclones and earthquakes, of course. And we play a very strong role not only in the emergency response in those areas, but also the mitigation and the work we can do to plan to mitigate the impact of these sorts of disasters. We've got a strategic vision in in Geoscience Australia around our ICT, and it's twofold. The first of those is to embed our ICT capability into multidisciplinary teams that are embedded in the business and that they self-serve to cloud platforms. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is, as you can see from my slide deck, we run on the smell of an oily rag in Geoscience Australia. And what we want to do is ultimately switch the balance of our ICT budget much more towards scientific data and computing and away from what I'd call the commodity side of ICT. I've used a very conservative 60-40 split, not quite the 80-20 that TERESA mentioned, but if we could achieve that, that'd be fantastic. So going into this, we essentially were spending 60% of our ICT budget on what I call commodity, so infrastructure and platforms and service delivery and the likes on the desktop, and 40% on scientific data and computing. Yet the demand from the business was very much around the scientific data and computing side of things. They wanted software engineers, they wanted data modelers, and they wanted them working in the science teams. So that's what we've tried to do. And the only way we can do that to provision that demand is to reduce our cost and increase our efficiency on the commodity side of things. Now, it's really important to note that these multidisciplinary teams, we want them to be self-serving to cloud platforms, of which Amazon Web Services is obviously a major platform. But it's the way we go about our work within those multidisciplinary teams where we have to be agile. We really want to take advantage of what the cloud offers around continuous delivery and continuous integration. It needs to be highly inclusive of the business, highly inclusive of the leadership in the science divisions, and it needs to focus on products. So our language has moved right away from science projects to products, because what we want these multidisciplinary teams to be doing is not just running projects, but we want them to be creating products and then maintaining those products. So in ICT, we don't have a business as usual legacy. The multidisciplinary teams are responsible for that. In fact, then the business is responsible for what percentage of those multidisciplinary teams they want doing new products or maintaining the old. So there's a big incentive around there. Our current position is that we have 8 multidisciplinary teams embedded into our science teams, delivering 45 products across the agency using Agile and continuous delivery, continuous integration. The names of some of these teams are the Flying Hellfish, the Raptors, the Autobots. So it's a fun place to work. And there's many more names that sort of I can't really put up here, but anyway. We also have created a small unit that's obviously going to grow, and we call it the Cloud Enablement Team. And it's really a team that works across all of those multidisciplinary teams around making sure that they're able to move into the cloud and that they're able to also move legacy systems into the cloud as well. We're using Amazon Web Services for most of our new products, and Amazon Web Services is a big ticket option around some of our legacy systems, and I'm going to move into an example that we've put in there already quite shortly. The other area of growth that we're experiencing within ICT is this notion of ecosystem architecture. We've dumbed it down a bit and call it what goes where. So it's really a small team, again, that works very closely with the multidisciplinary teams, depending on the data, the classification of data and the use of that data. Where does it go? Does it go to Amazon Web Services, or does it go, for example, we've got a partnership with the National Computational Infrastructure at the ANU. Does it go there? By the way, they've also got a partnership with Amazon Web Services as well. So another important component of this is the transition of infrastructure, desktop and associated support to a managed service. Okay, we've had to do that because what we wanted to do is we wanted to take that capacity and put it into scientific data and computing. So we've done that by going to a managed service with DXC. So that transformation, it's a journey that involves a number of steps, and it's really important that you follow these steps in order to get there. And there's 3 key ingredients. The first one is around culture, and by culture I mean the move towards a more agile, continuous delivery culture in the organisation. Process is the second one, particularly around the use of lean and automation, of which AWS provides a lot of tools in that space. And then there's the technology side of things. I'll start on the culture side of things. Now, it's very important that you foster a culture where the vision and potential around cloud is really well understood across the agency. So not just the IT people. And in fact, our experience over the last couple of years is we found most of the challenge within the ICT team in terms of moving to cloud and not in the science business. And based on my experience, the younger generation gets it really easily and adoption is pretty seamless. It's my generation. middle-aged white males, essentially, who are the problem. And in geoscience, that's a large proportion of our demographic. So it's really important that you spend time bringing this demographic on board. The multidisciplinary team culture, again, is very important, and the self-organising and the practice of agile principles. So that's why it's so important to have the business absolutely embedded into agile teams, and that manages the risk around decision-making within those teams in terms of priorities and technologies and processes. So a supportive culture is absolutely critical to making this work, and this has taken us a number of years. The process side of things, again, it comes down to looking at what you currently do. Don't focus on retrofitting. Really review your current business processes. Identify and remove waste. Automate where possible. Again, there's another plug for AWS and the automation side of things. One thing that I would like to highlight that we do, and I'd like to thank our partners at the Australian Tax Office and also at Australia Post. We've worked considerably with those two organisations over the last couple of years. And what we've done, well, as you all understand, or most of you would understand in government, the way we plan is each year we have a budget. We create our estimates and we work through that year and we track how we're going against that particular budget. What we do is we've implemented what we call program increment days. So we bring together those 45 products across those 8 teams. We bring them together, and once every quarter we do a review, and we essentially say, right, how are we going with all of those 45 products? How are we going with the teams? Have we got the right mix of skills? Have we got the right mix of capabilities? What do we need to change? Are we using the right architectures? Are we reusing? Are we following patterns in the way we're going about our business? So those program increment days are really important. And what we've found by the end of the year is that quite often we're able to, instead of getting to a point where you're underspent or overspent towards the end of the year, you're able to manage that as an ongoing basis and actually deliver a lot more during the course of that year than you might have estimated in the first place. On the technology side of things, Geoscience Australia is a relatively small organisation, so we've got a staff of about 600 people. We're based all in Canberra, although we do a lot of field work. What cloud does and what AWS have done for us is provided us an opportunity that we couldn't have done otherwise. We couldn't have had access to high-performance computing environments, high-performance data environments, scalable environments if we tried to do this ourselves. So this environment that is scalable, robust, and supports automation by default within those teams is crucial to us. And the need for speed is incredibly important as well. In the old days, you've got to reform your agile teams absolutely completely and get the infrastructure types into those agile teams. The problem that we had was we tried to implement agile a couple of years ago, but we still had that culture of take a ticket from infrastructure and 6 weeks later something might happen. Okay, so that's a key part of the agile side of things. It won't work otherwise. And obviously there's been a fair bit of talk about security as well. Security for us rests around the security of each of the platforms, but within these agile teams, we're putting security capability into those agile teams, so we're doing security by design. What I've got here is an example of the Sentinel system. Now, the Sentinel system is essentially it's a satellite that's across Australia, and what it's got is it's got hotspot capability, so it can pick up hotspots and track bushfires, real-time movement of bushfires. And what I've done here basically is we've got the application, we've got the web services, the FTP were all relocated to AWS, and the load testing survived over 20 million hits in 40 minutes. And what this table does here essentially is just gives you a bit of an example of the difference between, and this is fact, our old internal infrastructure and new infrastructure via AWS around uptime, cost, scalability, architecture, performance and security. The second example I've got is in relation to the missing Malaysian Airlines flight MH370. Geoscience Australia has been very heavily involved in the mapping of the seabed and the data that's been associated and used in the search. So that data is now publicly available. Phase 1 of that data is the topography of the sea floor. So it maps, and there's all sorts of fascinating things. There's shipwrecks and there's volcanoes and the likes. But it's absolutely essential to do that because the next part of the phase involved a ship towing a device off the back of the boat that essentially was doing the detailed search, and you can't have it bumping into things down there that you don't know. But all of that data, so phase 2 was that underwater search. All of that data, the applications, the web landing pages are now located on AWS, and it's really to ensure that availability and reliability for users. It's attracted global interest, and we couldn't have done that internally. We just couldn't have done it. So users can interrogate and download that data, and for the technical specialists, the raw and processed data sets are also available. I can't let this opportunity go without just talking a little bit about the importance of the data side of things. So in government, it's really not just the discovery and access to government data, it's the use of data. And for us, the key to this is making sure that our data is compliant with standards, our data is interoperable, and our data is able to be consumed machine to machine. If you get that in place, it just, the use of the cloud platform just goes boom. It's just fantastic because you're actually able to use the data. It's a new paradigm of data availability and scale for us. We used to be a 9 to 5, 5-day-a-week shop. So if something happened after hours or on a weekend, well, you know, if you're lucky enough, you get someone out after hours, but otherwise not. So I'd just like to make that link really between, and we saw it before in one of Teresa's slides, the link between data and the tools that are available in the cloud environment as well. So it's a key element for the availability of the data and the use of that data. So bringing it all together, I've already mentioned the program increment days. The work that we've done with multidisciplinary teams prompted an ICT task force within GA around the integration of planning into the overall business, a real lights-on moment for the agency that IT itself, the cost of IT itself is not going up. But what it's done for our agency is the increase in demand has pushed the cost up. So we're spending a lot more on IT, but as you can see through the Sentinel and MH370 examples, we're getting a lot more for the money that we're putting into it. And finally, I'd just like to just emphasise some of the key leadership calls that we had to make within Geoscience Australia in this changing paradigm of ICT as it's worked in government is the importance of partnerships. So our partnerships with the science divisions have been absolutely crucial in all of this. We're lucky, we've got a highly ICT literate workforce, so there's a bit of luck involved in that, but the partnership with the business is important. Partnerships with the ICT industry, absolutely important. We couldn't do this without AWS and the multiple other partners through that partnership. And also with other agencies. I've acknowledged the work of Australia Post and ATO in helping us get there. Those partnerships with other agencies are crucial, and we've got that within government. And the final point I'd like to leave you with is this notion of embracing shadow IT. I know a lot of my counterparts in government spend a lot of time and effort trying to shut down shadow ICT. My view is embrace it. Absolutely embrace it. Why would you want to compete with it? Embrace it, use it, and put that capability into the data part of your business or the core part of your business. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. So clearly, the work they're doing is driving amazing industry change. And I think what's needed more in the geoscience and spatial area is we need even more superheroes because we need those job skills, we need people trained. And the way that we're trying to work to create that is through our AWS Educate program. So you saw our Beagle Valley students, which we're really thrilled to have here today, but we need to force multiply them in big ways. There's hundreds of thousands of jobs open in information technology, and we have a real gap of both people qualified to take those jobs and the skills that they need. And we want to create the next generation of technology providers around cloud. And I will tell you, wherever I go around the world, literally the first thing I hear is, can you help me with the job skills we need? How do we get training? How do we get education around cloud? So we created a program and launched it almost 2 years ago called AWS Educate. We have over 1,000 universities and educational institutions in this program. We have the top 10 global computer science and information systems institutions in the program, and we continue to add. And in fact, we have many of your universities here in Australia as part of the program, and we're going to add the high school programs into this year, as well as focus much more on coding for what we call K through 12 or the primary years. up through the high school programs. So we're excited to have these, and we give away cloud credits, training. We work with the professors and the students. We do online curriculum, and it's really changing our work with the universities in terms of getting the right DevOps curriculum for cloud. And the students have really, I love this, the students have started to embark on the cloud career pathways of the program, and notably cloud architects and software engineers are popular among the students at the start. This is a quote. But we created and launched something called Cloud Career Pathways, which allows a student to go in and create their own cloud career pathway and get badged along the way. And then they can put up their resume once they get certified, and we job match them with employers, our partners, ourselves, and our customers who are looking for skills out there. So it's pretty cool. We're going to continue to scale this program in a really big way. We're working with both universities, community colleges, specialty programs. TAFE programs would be your equivalent. And we just want to continue to create the right programs in the right locations and move this along much faster. Another program really near and dear to my heart is something called We Power Tech. And this is about diversity and technology for jobs. Many job openings out there, but very few are being filled by women and diversity groups and populations. So if you think about your indigenous population here, would be an example. We're working with groups in Africa. We work with a partner called Digital Data Divide, where we're doing job skills for underprivileged students in Africa and Kenya right now. But we launched this program. We have a website, wiki pages, and are doing now community events around the world. And it's overpopulated. Every time we host one of these, we have more people than we have rooms. So they're going very well. And you're going to continue to see AWS be really involved in We Power Tech. So join us in the dialogue and go up and put your story up about how you got into technology. So I want you to remember, you guys are our superheroes. And I don't say that lightly. I really mean that. We thank you for all the work you do in providing and guiding 24/7 government. Your mission and really just the work of the people, I would say, what you do. It's really important. And all of my team, we're committed to you, to making sure what you're doing is going better, and we can help you be faster and cheaper and more secure at what you're trying to provide in your work for the citizens. So thank you again for all that. I guess the last thing I just want to say is thank you for allowing me to come back. Again, we launched our region here almost 5 years ago. We were early into the country. I love my visits here. I always learn so much from talking to all the partners and customers. And I just really welcome you to stay for the rest of the day. Go to the breakout sessions, enjoy. And again, thank you so much for your time and attention today, and give me your feedback about the conference. So thank you so much. Thank you.